Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be reading chapter 4, and I'm sorry if I'm just not making much sense tonight while I'm reading. It is almost 11 o'clock and I am tired. So I hope you guys enjoy, and let's get started. Chapter 4. Shaking Izuku pried himself off his chair, not making any contact with the blonde. Bakugo simply scoffed, going back to his seat. Although the whole class felt different after that, the class seemed to be uneased, waiting for Bakugo to unleash his anger on one of them. But he sat there silently, tapping his pencil on his desk, shaking his head. Every few minutes, Bakugo would look over his shoulder as if expecting the greenette to be sitting behind him, looking out the window. Yet, every time he looked over, he shrunk with more weight of Izuku not being in the room. He still had to ask about the bandages and, well, the cuts. To say the class didn't see the huge personality change in Izuku isn't even a way to describe it. They all had. From the first day his smile began to falter until it finally fell, leaving him with a broken smile, barely even shown. The class didn't want to put Izuku on the spot, so no one ever brought it up to him, hoping he would come back the next day, being the happy Simonin rule he once was, even though deep down the class understood that the Izuku they first met wasn't the same. He most likely never will be. Izuku speed walked quickly down the empty hallway, head down low to the ground, breathing hinged. What would All Might need to see him about? Maybe Izuku's mom? He begged if it was his mother that it would be good news. He paused when he made it to All Might's office. The door was a light cream color. The doorknob was a dark gray hue. On the front of the door, it read Toshinori. Izuku sighed, knocking on the hard wood. He heard a few paper shifts, as well as what seemed to be few pens toppling over. He heard All Might shuffle to the door, following by the door swinging open. What greeted him was All Might in his muscle form. He wore his normal white button-up shirt, as well as his tan trench coat. Noticing it was only Izuku, white smoke puffed out of him. When the smoke cleared, a shorter, skinnier All Might was there. You want to see me? He stuttered out, still not sure what All Might wanted to tell him. Young Midoriya, please come sit down, All Might said with a smile, motioning for Izuku to sit on a chair seated right in front of All Might's desk. Izuku complied, sitting quietly on the blue school chair. All Might quickly sat down across from him. A look of uncertainty bubbled on his features. Me and Recovery Girl were wondering if you wanted to take antidepressants, he finally said, his voice stern now. He stared into Izuku's eyes, waiting for a reply. Antidepressants? Why would I need Izuku stopped himself. He hadn't really thought about it before. Now, thinking about the symptoms of depression, it seemed clear to him. He was depressed, deeply depressed. He thought for a moment, tapping him lightly. The thought of being happy again was honestly the most wonderful thing he had thought of the last year. His friends wouldn't have to be worried about him, and most of all, Izuku would finally feel like his old self. He nodded, making up his mind. That would be wonderful. For once in a very long time, Izuku smiled. It wasn't forced, it wasn't fake. Just the thought of him being himself again sent rays of excitement and happiness flowing out of him. God, did that feel nice. Izuku felt like crying, although he wasn't sad. If anything, Izuku was happy. The next few hours were odd for Izuku. He was handed the medication before class began, and about 3 hours in, he felt weight began to lift off of him. Once lunch rolled around, Izuku felt better than he had in years. He finally felt like he just maybe go on. Just maybe. Izuku got up from his seat, a new aura following him, one that set his classmates at ease. He had his old aura, although it was not as dominant and confident. It also seemed to be weaker and a bit sadder. Most of the students in 1A let out a small squeal of happiness, feeling their classmate have a better aura, made most of them excited and happy. Uraraka bounded over to him, squeezing him into a hug. Izuku let out a confused and surprised shriek and stumbled backwards, toppling over his chair. He was sent falling onto his back, the wind being rushed out of him as he finally made contact with the hard floor. Uraraka had caught herself just in time, but hadn't been able to get Deku. She bursted out laughing as she saw her friend lying on the ground. To everyone's surprise, including Izuku, he started giggling, a wide smile brought into his face. Everyone stared at him in shock, trying to figure out if he was being genuine. To their amazement, he was. Izuku awkwardly scratched the back of his neck, trying to pinpoint why they were staring at him. Uraraka bursted out crying, running to her friend. She tried to explain why she was so happy, but instead threw herself onto him, hugging the dear life out of the boy. Whoa! He shrieked, pulling back from her embracement. Why are you crying? Are you smiled. She started sobbing, relief washed over Izuku's face. I'm sorry I haven't been acting like myself lately. I guess I have a lot to explain. He got up, dusting off his pants. But that's for another time. I'm going to head to lunch. He giggled again, sending the class into overdrive. God, had they missed Izuku. Bakugo watched from in front of him, barely holding back his own tears. He hadn't seen Deku smile like that for months. Although for some reason he found himself jealous. That smile was for Floaty Bitch, and not himself. Bakugo wished he could suck up his goddamn selfishness and go hug the poor boy, but he knew he wouldn't. At least not now. Izuku sat with his friends, explaining a bit of what happened, such as how he had been depressed and now he was on his way to recovery. He was honestly shocked he felt this good already. What he didn't know was the medication he took was specifically made for him, meant to make him feel like himself again. All Might had asked one of his friends to specially design a medicine that over a small amount of time could help Izuku with his problems. Seemed it worked. Of course, after 1-2 weeks, it will wear off, but he hoped by then his friends will be able to cheer him up enough for the effect to be permanent. Okay, guys, so chapter 4 was really short, so I'm gonna read chapter 5 in this video too. So let's get started on chapter 5. Chapter 5. Little did poor Izuku know, the sweet release won't last for long. Not even medication can help with this. Izuku blindly walked home. He finally picked his feet up, though he seemed to still have a shadow looking over him. It made him feel a little bit uneased, but he tried his very best to push it aside and continue his walk. For some weird reason, the view of Koski's face after he had scene Izuku was stuck in Izuku's head. The relief in his childhood friend's eyes was a different look. Midoriya will cherish that memory for the rest of his life. That sight of the explosive teen like that made Izuku feel fuzzy and a bit lightheaded. Izuku simply shook his head and braced himself. He slowly opened his house door. It shook, then screeched open. The silence in the house sent chills down Izuku's spine. Yet it wasn't for long. "You fucking bitch!" A scream ran out through the house, shaking its walls. Izuku went pale. He backed away from the door, petrified, shaking. A large buff man ran out of one of the rooms at the back of the house. He had oily green hair that had been grown down to his shoulders. He had piercing black eyes, and that seeped into Izuku's soul. He came dashing out, shaking his fists in pure rage. "What the fuck have you done?" he screamed, aiming for Izuku's jaw. He hit him square in the jawbone, nearly knocking him out. Izuku screamed in pain, clutching his face. Tears ran down his face like waterfalls. His vision went white, and he couldn't think properly. He fell to the ground, his screams dying down. He looked up to his father, pain in his eyes. The broken look back. His father scoffed and blew scorching fire at his son's face. Izuku tore at his face with his nails, shrieking in agony. His father came at him, kicking him in the stomach. "How fucking dare you? She should have stayed here and died. You're as useless as a fucking dog," his father basically screamed, smacking Izuku across the face. "How many times have I told you to leave her be?" He repeated, punching his son, not allowing him to speak. Not that Izuku could speak, even if he tried. His father reached out into his pockets, pulling out his switchblade. Izuku screamed in fear, running backwards into a bookcase, knocking it to the ground. "Help! Help! Anyone, please!" he pleaded, trying to scream. It came out a pitiless croak. Fear surged through his veins, making his blood run cold, blood seeping out of Izuku's mouth and body. Blood seeping out of Izuku's mouth and body. Large punches from his father punches. He clutched at his stomach and face, tears staining his face. Since you seem you can't keep the damn mouth of yours shut, how about I cut out the tongue of you? Yeah?" His father hissed instantly. He began stepping to his son. A devilish smile crept to his face. "No!" Izuku found his voice. He screamed bloody murder, throwing a vase at his father. It missed him and shattered 3 feet away. His father laughed and began his agonizing, slow steps towards his helpless son. "No, please, no! Stop! Someone help! Anyone, please!" Izuku screamed in fear. "Help!" he cried again, going into a tight ball. "Please, help!" he croaked, tears choking him, making his throat burn from the effort of screaming. His father laughed, boomed through the house. He blew flames at the switchblade, heating it until it turned orange. Then he turned back to his son. "Oh, this is going to be fun," he smirked. Izuku's eyes widened. Fear seemed to be pushing through his body. He couldn't move, scream, not even cry. He sat in silence and prayed that someone could read his mind. "Anyone, please save me. I don't want this. Please hear this. Hear my cry for help. please." His father pushed open Izuku's mouth. He didn't even struggle. He accepted death at this point. No one could hear him, even if he did try and scream. He sat still, waiting for the pain to begin. It never came. The door bashed open with a loud crack, smoke filling the house and Izuku's lungs. "Deku!" "Thank God."